Hello, this is Mrs. Rodman. I want to share with you some of the tricks that I use to remember the Bill of Rights, also known as those first 10 amendments to the Constitution. Now with number 1, I want you to think about the fact that these are the rights that they wrote down first. They were so important that they didn't want to wait, they wrote them down right away. So if you hold up one finger, because this is the First Amendment, one finger, and you take that one finger and you put it in front of your lips, this is how I remember freedom of speech. Now, I realize this is a little bit backwards because it means don't speak, but it does help you remember freedom of speech. Now, with that same finger, if you point up to the sky or your classroom ceiling, depending on where you are right now, this is how I remember freedom of religion. Now, with that finger up, if you imagine that there is a magical press button in front of you, you have the right to turn your finger around and press that button because you have freedom of press. Now, when the founding fathers said you have freedom of press, they didn't mean that you have rights to press weird imaginary buttons. What they mean is that you have the right to write down your ideas and share them with the world, like in newspapers or online. Even though they didn't have the internet back then, you still have that right. So that's freedom of press. The First Amendment also has freedom of petition and freedom of peaceful assembly, but I didn't have cool like finger tricks for those. The Second Amendment. Now, when I think about the Second Amendment, I think, how many arms do you have? You have 2 arms, and this is the Second Amendment. And you have the right to bear arms. Now, once again, they're not actually talking about your right to have arms. What they're talking about is your right to armory. Okay? So you have the right to have weapons and guns to keep you and your family safe. The Third Amendment. This one is my favorite because it makes me think of the story Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. And there's a few reasons why. First off, there's 3 bears, and this is the Third Amendment, right? But also, if you think about this story, the bears did not invite Goldilocks into their home. She came in without their permission, started eating their porridge, she broke the chair, slept in the bed, she was complaining the whole time, she was super rude, and the bears were unhappy about it. So the way that the Third Amendment came about is, if you remember when we talked about the Revolutionary War, the colonists had to let British soldiers stay in their homes, even when they didn't want them to. They had to share their porridge. They had to have them in their beds. They didn't like it. So the first founding fathers sat down, they wrote the Third Amendment, and they said, no courting of soldiers. You no longer have to let soldiers in your home. Your delicious porridge is now yours to enjoy. The Fourth Amendment. When I think about this one, I start by thinking about the 4 different walls of my home. Because if the government or the police want to come into your home, they cannot just show up and look around and start taking things for themselves, right? They can't just take all your Pokemon cards. So, there is a process to this. They have to first go to a judge and get a warrant and explain why they want to go to your home. Is there like a crime that they suspect and they want to get like evidence? And if they do have a good reason, they get a warrant and they can come into those 4 walls of your home, search and seize the things that they think are important to solve that crime. The Fifth Amendment. If you hold out your hand and you put those 5 fingers on top of your mouth, this is how I remember you have the right to not self-incriminate. You have the right to keep your mouth shut. So, if you ever watch TV and they talk about you have the right to remain silent, they're talking about your Fifth Amendment. You do not have to tell the police everything that you've ever done wrong in your life. If you want to, great. I'm sure they would like to hear that, but you do not have to. Now, if you take the other hand and you put it on top of that one, you now have double the amount of fingers on your face, right? This is how I remember double jeopardy, also in the Fifth Amendment. So what double jeopardy is if you are found innocent of a crime, you are innocent. They can't try you for that same crime again. Even if they go back and they find more evidence later, that's it. You were found innocent. They have to respect that. The Sixth Amendment. I like to use alliteration with the Sixth Amendment because I'm a language arts teacher. So I think of super speedy 6. So if you hold out 6 fingers and then you take the one finger and you point to your wrist, you're pointing to your watch, right? So this has to do with time. That's why it's super speedy 6. You have the right to a speedy trial. Number 7. this I like to think of as lucky number 7. You're lucky because in civil cases, you have the right to have a jury hear your case. Okay? Now, with the 7th Amendment, I actually think of Peppa Pig because I've always thought that the characters in Peppa Pigs all look like they're just number 7s with clothes on them. So, with the 7th Amendment, you have the right to a jury by trial for civil cases, and so you have these 7 characters from Peppa Pig who all look like the number 7, and they are now your jury. The 8th Amendment. Now, if you look at the number 8, it kind of reminds me of a set of handcuffs. So, if you were getting arrested and the cop puts the handcuffs on super tight so it like cuts off your circulation, that would be considered cruel, right? They're not going to purposely hurt you just to be mean, just to be cruel. Also, if you looked at the number 8 and you flip it sideways, this is actually the infinity sign. So, they can't take you and keep you forever for like a petty crime. They can't keep you forever and always for infinity. That would be considered an unusual punishment. So 8th Amendment, you have rights against cruel and unusual punishments. Number 9. Now I think of number 9 as like a catch-all. The Founding Fathers had other things to do with their lives, right? They had families. They wanted to go out and see the world and actually sit down and eat. So they didn't take the time to write down every single right that you have. Instead, they wrote the 9th Amendment. Now, if I think of 9, it makes me think of the German word Nein, which means no. So just know that you do have other rights that aren't explicitly said in the Bill of Rights. Number 10. This one, I'd like to take a shout out to all the Ohio State fans because number 10 makes me think, oh, what's the 10th Amendment? Because so this kind of looks like the number 10, right? I-O kind of looks like 10. So the 10th Amendment actually has to do with states' rights. So if you see this is that I-O is the number 10 and it has to do with states. So the 10th Amendments talk about the rights that the states have. And hopefully that is helpful to you. Thank you for listening.